welcome to this video. This is about Grunfeld setups by Black. What does that mean? The Grunfeld is a combination of the moves d5 and a kingside fianchetto, which is cunningly the same that we are doing. So what we play here is d4, knight f3, g3, bishop g2 as our standard setup, and in the Grunfeld, Black is doing the same. We of course have a chapter on the reverse Grunfeld, so we are basically here when Black plays in a Grunfeld setup facing a symmetrical defense. One way to reach the main position of our chapter here would be d5, knight f3, knight f6, g3, g6, g2, 7 castles, and now we go c4. Our standard move order basically. And here Black has a fundamental choice of playing in a very solid fashion with c6, after which I recommend to play the move b3 and prepare the queenside fianchetto, or they can play more dynamically with taking or knight c6 or other choices that are more non-symmetrical. This is the main way to get to the Grunfeld starting position here. The other way is this one, where Black is playing d5 now, leading to the same position, or they can play d5, any move here for example, or here, which is maybe the most frequently seen one, and then again we played c4. This is the main chunk of this chapter, what happens after this position after c4. There are other ways to get there, and we should look at in particular one of them, and this is after d4, Black not starting with knight f6 or d5 but starting with g6. This is a little twist. We play knight f3, bishop g7, and now according to our concept we play g3. I should mention that Black can also play d5 here, which is a bad move order due to c4. This is something that we will check in some minutes. Now here bishop g7, g3, and d5 here. This will basically almost all of the time transpose to a regular main line. After bishop g2, most people play knight f6, and then we get this completely symmetrical development that we have looked at, and that will be the main line. There are some offbeat tries that Black may try, and they should be studied at least briefly. An idea for Black is to play the move e6. This is rare, but it leads to somewhat unconventional positions. We play castles, knight e7, and we play c4, the normal moves basically. And here Black most of the time chooses a setup with knight b to c6 that puts pressure on the pawn. They can also castle short here, after which I recommend to play queen c2, and after knight to c6 play with a rook d1 setup. This is the same thing that I do recommend after knight bc6, so it's basically a transposition. So we play something like this: e3, cover the d4 pawn, queen to c2, rook to d1. So this is the setup against this e6, knight b, e6, knight e7 build up. Something like this looks I think very harmonious. You don't really need to know all that much here, and it is a rather uncommon variation. Something like this could happen: queen to e2, c5. This has been played in a high-level game, bishop b2, and we get to the hanging pawns here. That was played in a game Yuri Kazimjanov 2014. And after knight f5, White had the typical central breakthrough with d5 that happens so often in a hanging pawn formation. Here White was somewhat better because it was a very strong initiative for him. Again, this e6, knight bc6 is a pretty rare line, but it doesn't hurt to have seen it once. Another possibility for Black here is the move knight to h6. This looks a little bit odd, but the knight has an idea. going to f5 will put up lots of pressure against d4. And that is in fact something that we should take note of. I recommend to castle, as always, and now knight f5. And here we get to this the position why it makes sense to look at knight h6 briefly, because now the solution to this is not so obvious. We almost always play c4 against this kind of d5 setup. Here, this is not a good idea, yeah, because after the capture, black has immediately lots of pressure, and we don't get this back easily, really not, and the compensation is actually questionable, really. So we shouldn't do that. We have a different idea though, and it's, I think, something that is going to lead to a small advantage for white for sure. That is the move c3. That is very uncommon in our repertoire. I rarely play such a smallish looking move, but here it is good. The reason is that we are going to play for the e4 break. And this is something that black has neglected. With the knight being on f5, he doesn't control e4. Now it could happen like this: castles, knight d2, and now knight d6. Yeah, that's the way for black to play this. You at least want to prevent e4 for the moment. And now rook e1, simply preparing e4. Yeah, funny enough, this position I had on the board once, but with black. Yeah, that was that was a funny thing to rediscover when I wrote this course, that I played this one with black. That happened in the Belgium league, and I wanted to present my opponent with some unconventional problems. The bad thing was he played it perfectly. He played exactly like this, and by the time I already regretted my choice, because I really, it's tough to see anything better now for black than just play a normal developing move, and then after e4 d takes, knight takes to take on e4, and then you wonder why on earth did I play this this long knight journey when I ultimately take on e4. So this is, I think, just a bit better for white. Let's look at 2 or 3 continuations. So back then, I know I considered bishop f5, but after knight h4, white gets e4 in after all. And if you check this, white is just better. Yeah, this is a good maneuver. The knight can come to f4. And what is a permanent problem for black, he cannot really play c5 or e5 that easily. And we have a couple of ideas. Sometimes you can even consider to play h4, h5 and play against a slightly weakened king side here. The knight on f4 would support that. I think white has a small advantage here for sure. Going back to the position after rook e1, you could also stop f5 radically, yeah, like in Stonewall style. But that is not an issue at all, because if you have looked at the Dutch chapter already, or will do so in the future, in any Stonewall, we have a standard setup. We want a knight on d3 and on f3. And this is something that you can easily go for here. Yeah, something like this is just going to be somewhat better for white. Here with the fianchetto, there we also have additional ideas that are not so much happening in other Stonewall types. For example, h4, h5 can be an idea. And also here sometimes we could trade off this bishop on h6. We are just going to be a little bit better here. Note that still c4 is on the agenda in the future. Yeah, so it's going to be a rather, yeah, it's a bit odd, but it's a typical Stonewall that can be played similarly to the one starting after 1f5. I ultimately played the move b6, trying to develop, and the thing is, white simply played e4, and now you don't really have much better than taking. Bishop b7, and then ultimately I was in this position, and this is not very nice for black. White simply has pressure on the e file and on the pawn, and it's really annoying. I went knight f6, and my opponent here played the move knight e5 back in the game, and I was in trouble. Yeah, I was just in trouble. That is a good move. You can argue about this. This is what I'm recommending. I think this is even better, yeah, because you simply play this, you play rook d1, and you can delay this idea for the moment. When this is traded, those two bishops are traded, then the c6 square becomes very weak.